The Gravakul were, by any metric, terrifying. They stood between 8 and 10 feet tall, their bodies a study in controlled mass. Dense muscle wrapped in overlapping plates of natural chitin that shifted from deep charcoal at the spine to burnished copper at the edges. 4 arms, 2 primary and 2 secondary, each capable of bending durasteel pipe with casual effort. Their faces were broad, flat, and expressive in ways humans took years to learn to read. A slow narrowing of the 3 amber eyes meant amusement. A ripple along the neck plates meant discomfort. A full spreading of the secondary arms meant dominance display. They were, the xenobiologists agreed, one of the most physically formidable sapient species in the known galaxy. And they were, the sociologists agreed shortly after, one of the most deeply traditional. Which is why, when Lieutenant James Okafor of the UES Resolute submitted a formal bonding declaration for Gravakul warrior caste female Verithic of the Ironstone Brood, the entire diplomatic wing of Traverse Station lost its collective mind. "You understand," said Ambassador Priel 9, the station's Veth-carried diplomatic liaison, "that this is not a matter of cultural insensitivity. We are not saying humans are lesser. We are saying the physics simply do not." "With respect, Ambassador," James said, folding his hands on the table with the calm of a man who had already decided, "I didn't ask for a structural engineering assessment." "He did not ask," confirmed Verithic, who was sitting beside James and absolutely dwarfing him. She stood 9 feet 2 inches. She weighed, in Earth terms, somewhere north of 800 pounds of dense chitin-armored muscle. She looked at Priel 9 the way a mountain looks at rain. He asked for filing confirmation of the declaration. "I am asking also. Please confirm." Priel 9's neck frills fluttered. Around the table, 3 other xenodiplomats exchanged glances that communicated clearly across species lines, the universal expression of people watching something happen that they cannot stop. "The Gravakul bonding rite," Priel 9 tried again, "requires the completion of the joining ceremony, that is to say, it involves the physical." "We know what it involves," James said pleasantly. The silence that followed was profound. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. James Okafor had met Verithic 14 months earlier, during a joint patrol rotation on the Kessel margin, a stretch of contested space where 3 factions had competing mining claims and everyone needed someone watching their back. He'd been assigned as human liaison to a Gravakul scouting detachment, a posting most of his unit had viewed as either a punishment or a suicide mission. He'd viewed it as an opportunity. The Gravakul did not, as a rule, warm to outsiders. They communicated in a dense, layered language of words, posture, and chitin movement that took most aliens years to parse. They had a blunt, almost brutal honesty that other species often mistook for hostility. They valued strength, not merely physical, but the deeper kind, the kind that holds its shape under pressure. James, who stood 5'11" and weighed 180 pounds on a good day, had walked into their camp on day 1, looked up at the assembled warriors, the shortest of whom cleared 7 feet, and said, "Impassable Gravakul, I'm here to learn from you. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, and I'll fix it." Verithic, who had been watching from the edge of the camp with arms folded, had said nothing. But her neck plates had done something none of the others did. It took James 3 weeks to learn that the particular ripple she'd made was the Gravakul equivalent of being quietly, unexpectedly impressed. By month 2, she was drilling him personally. By month 4, he could read her posture faster than most of her own broodkin. By month 6, they were spending their off-rotation hours talking about everything, about nothing, about the way stars looked different, depending on which side of the margin you were standing on. The Gravakul did not have a word for falling in love. They had a word, Threkvi, that meant something closer to the recognition of a person whose absence would diminish the world. It was considered the most serious word in their language. It was not said lightly. Verithic said it to James on a Tuesday, in the cargo bay of the Resolute, surrounded by equipment crates and the distant hum of the FTL drive. James, who had been learning Gravakul for 8 months by then, understood exactly what she said. He sat with it for a long moment. Then he said, in her language, "I know. Me too. She had looked at him for a very long time after that. Then she spread her secondary arms. Not the dominance display, but the other version, the one used only within broods, the one that meant, "You are mine to protect." He had reached up and put his hand against her forearm, which was roughly the size of his torso, and she had gone very still in the way she went still when something mattered enormously. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The bonding declaration was filed. The diplomatic wing complained. The xenobiologist submitted 3 separate reports. One of the station's doctors requested a private meeting with James that he left after 11 minutes, thanking her politely and closing the door quietly behind him. Verithic's broodmother, a 700-year-old matriarch named Vorkithel who had fought in 6 wars and outlasted 4-star systems, traveled personally to Traverse Station upon hearing the news. The meeting between Vorkithel and James lasted 4 hours. No recording was made. No translator was present, because James spoke Gravakul well enough not to need one. When they emerged, Vorkithel looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she placed one enormous hand, gently, with extraordinary care, on top of James's head. It covered his entire skull. Her amber eyes did something that no human had ever documented a Gravakul elder doing in the presence of an outsider. She let her neck plates fully relax. It meant, "I see no threat here." It meant, "This one is accounted for." In the old tongue, in the deep grammar of the Gravakul that predated spaceflight, it meant something closer to, "He is brood." Later, a junior diplomat would ask James what they had talked about for 4 hours. She wanted to know if I was afraid of her daughter. James said, "What did you tell her?" He smiled. "I told her Verithic is the most capable person I've ever met, and that I've never once felt like I needed to be afraid of someone capable. I told her I know what I am, and I know what Verithic is, and I know the difference doesn't matter the way people think it does." The diplomat blinked, and she accepted that. She laughed for about 40 seconds. James said, "Gravakul laughter sounds like a rock slide." It was incredible. Then she told me I had better not make her daughter regret choosing something small. He paused. I told her I had no intention of being small in any of the ways that counted. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The joining ceremony took place on Gravakul Prime, in the Ironstone Brood's ancestral hold, before an assembled gathering of 300 warriors and elders who had traveled from across the sector specifically to see this with their own eyes. The ceremony involved trials, tests of endurance, of will, of the ability to hold position when every instinct said to flee. They were designed for Gravakul. They were not designed for humans. James completed all of them. Not easily. Not without cost. He came through the 3rd trial with 2 cracked ribs and a dislocated shoulder that Verithic reset herself, with a focus and a gentleness that made the watching elders go very quiet. He came through the 4th trial, the endurance dark, 3 hours alone in a sealed chamber calibrated for Gravakul sensory deprivation, which for humans meant something considerably more intense, without making a sound. He stood at the end of it, in front of 300 of the most formidable beings in known space, breathing carefully, and he did not sit down. Vorkithel watched him from the high seat. Her neck plates moved. Verithic, standing beside him, made a sound low in her chest, the Gravakul equivalent of someone exhaling with their whole body, the sound of attention resolved. "The small one holds," said one of the elders in the old tongue. "He is not small," Verithic said. Her voice, deep and resonant as a struck bell, carried to every corner of the hold. "He is precisely the right size. He fits exactly where he is supposed to fit." The hall was silent. Then Vorkithel spread all 4 of her arms, the full display, ancient and enormous, and said the words that completed the bonding. James looked up at Verithic. She looked down at him. Around them, 300 warriors of the Ironstone Brood struck their chest plates in unison. The traditional salute, the sound like thunder in an enclosed space, shaking dust from the rafters. He reached up. She reached down. Their hands met in the middle. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Later, much later, a xenosociologist at the University of New Carthage would publish a paper on the Okaphorverithic bonding and its implications for interspecies relations. It would be cited 400 times in the first year. Its central argument was that human beings had a peculiar and perhaps unique capacity, the ability to be genuinely, unself-consciously unintimidated by things larger than themselves, and to pursue connection across gaps that other species calculated as impassable. The paper's conclusion read, in part, when asked whether he had doubted himself at any point in the process, Lieutenant Okafor said only she was worth it. The math was easy. The xenosociologist noted in a footnote that Gravakol Verithik, present during the interview, had made a sound upon hearing this that translated most closely as, "He always says things like that."